everybody, I'm Christine Danchuk and I'm here with Frank Correa, and it's Friday, so it's Tech Fridays, so we're here to answer your tech questions. Okay, so I hope you guys are all doing well, and we have two questions here that we just got the other day, so we're going to go ahead and start with that. We're going to answer these questions first, and then we're going to go over some gauges here that you see in front of you. Okay? All right, so Jim Wood, he has a question, Frank. It says here, a 57 wagon, on my 57 wagon, should the rear brake line be a 1/8 or a 3/16? Around here, I guess meaning where he lives, it gets rusty and nobody has the original lines. It's a disc drum car. Sorry guys, I can't speak today.
All right, so the brake lines, factory original brake lines are 3/16 on the rear axle. Now up in the front, there's a mix. When it's drum, there's a mix of a couple 1/4 inch lines to carry volume to the wheel cylinders, and then you got 3/16 to the rest of the car, down from the frame line all the way to the rear. So when we do the disc in the front and the drum in the back, or even 4-wheel disc, you pretty much want to stick with 3/16 throughout the car. You never want to go smaller than that, but the 3/16 being that size, a little smaller than a 1/4 inch, does create a little more pressure in the lines as well. And we do have pre-bent factory style brake lines for the rear axle, as long as you're keeping with the wheel cylinders and the drums.
Okay, great. All right, so this next question comes to us from James Quinn, and he says that he will be changing the pillar complete assembly on the passenger side of his 55 two-door sedan, and he would like any tips that you can give him.
Well, anytime doing any major sheet metal replacement on a car, the most important thing, especially on a two-door sport coupe or convertible, is to brace up your sheet metal. If you have to make your own little braces and tack weld them to the body, that's just to keep it from going out of whack when you're starting to weld the stuff back in. You don't want to get it back done and then your door doesn't shut, or if you're replacing something else like a 1/4 panel or just taking the body off the frame in general, you need to brace up the body so it doesn't warp. Those bodies, doesn't matter if it's a sedan or a sport coupe, they will twist as soon as it's off the frame, or as soon as you start removing some of the metal.
Okay. All right. We have a question here from Fernando Felix, and it's in Spanish, and I can kind of understand it, but I don't want to, I'm going to wait on that one. So sorry, Fernando. We'll get back to you on that one.
I'm responding.
Okay, so we'll respond to you, but yeah, I'm not really good with Spanish, so sorry. Okay, let's see here. Next question from Thomas Del Prado. Let's see here. Oh, so he wants to know, he's looking for a video on our site to show how to rebuild the power steering on the 57 with your rebuilt kit. Is that a difficult process? Because he wants to see a video on it, because
I don't believe we do have a video on it. Unfortunately, you may have to use the shop manual for now. The ram cylinder is not difficult at all, as long as there's nothing wrong with the cylinder or the shaft. As long as the shaft's not bent, scratched, scored, anything wrong with it, that one's easy. But the control valve, that's a little bit more trickier, because there might be some tolerances that you have to go by, which if the tolerances are out on it, you would not want to rebuild it right away. You may have to find a couple of the replacement parts, and unfortunately be possibly original parts. That one's quite tricky. And then on the pump, we do have a lot of replacement parts. We've got the rotor and vanes that could get pitted, and once they get pitted real bad, then the pump won't create pressure anymore. So we do have some of the important parts for the pump assembly and the instructions in the original shop manual. If you don't have an original shop manual, we do sell reprints of the original shop manual. On that control valve, being it's so tricky, there is a gentleman in Texas, Authentic Automotive. He's got a website that you can go to. I would suggest if it's a little too tricky to get it rebuilt yourself, I would suggest having him do it. I've replaced them myself and had him rebuild them for me to make sure all the tolerances were in check for it to work good when I put it back together.
So he's over in Texas?
Yes,
Okay.
in Texas. He's got a website that you can go to and get his phone number and his address and stuff, and he should be able to help you out.
And that was Authentic Automotive?
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, well, I hope that helps, Thomas. Let's see here. So while we're waiting, you guys, for more questions to come in, I'm gonna have Frank here go over these gauges, okay? So type in your questions. We're here for you for the next half hour. Well, a little less than a half hour.
So we got some replacement gauges here. You can see this is a replacement gauge for the stock gauges. It's a brand new reproduction, and just so you guys know, after all these years of these gauges being in the cars, the needles, some of the lines on the face, the pigment in the paint will fade, and at this time you might see your needle might be almost white, and then you might see that the little slash lines, they might actually be white as well. But these are redone just like original with the green lines and the fluorescent needle. And same with 55 and 56. Their needles were a light mint green, and the lines were a light mint green, which the pigment would be faded by now, and they would be probably white. So just so you know.
Okay, and then before you go on to the next item, Frank, we do have a question from James. He wants to know, so his brakes on a 57 Bel Air, they stick with the stock single barrel. Should he upgrade to a dual barrel or a booster?
The master cylinder sticking?
Okay, it looks okay. Brakes on a 57 Bel Air, it says here stick with the stock single barrel. So should he upgrade to a dual barrel or a booster?
It could be something more in the master cylinder. There's no reason why, just because it's single master cylinder, that it should be sticking. You could be, and if you're talking about sticking as in the shoes are not returning, they're keeping pressure on the drum.
Oh, I'm sorry. So he says here, no, not sticking. Should I keep a single barrel or go dual?
Well, going dual is a safety feature. Just think about if you were to lose any one of your 4 wheel cylinders, got a bad leak, all your brake fluid's going to squirt out of that one wheel cylinder, and you're not going to have any brakes. With a dual master cylinder splitting the front from the rear, if the front goes bad, you got the rear to stop you. If the back go bad, then you got the front still to stop you, because the master cylinder has 2 separate reservoirs. They're completely separate from each other. So it's a safety feature as well as a more equal way of stopping as well.
Okay, so James, I hope that answered your question. If not, just go ahead and let us know. Okay, all right, Frank.
So we got some upgrades here for the 57. What I just showed you was the stock replacement gauge. We've got here from Classic Instruments, we've got some pretty nice gauges here that are simple to install. They've got their own built-in computer system. They're fully electronic, nothing's mechanical. They do give you the sender units for the water and the oil. And you can continue to use your stock original fuel sender as well. But for the gauge itself, it's electronic, so you're going to get a sender unit to go on the transmission, and then you can program this to your gear ratio. If you were to change a tire size, a rear axle gear ratio, you can actually keep reprogramming this to be perfect to the car itself. Then from Dakota, they've got a new series. This is their newest series of gauges. It's meant to look like that original gauge, but this is actually a computer system inside here. This gauge will actually keep track of hours on the engine, has a tripometer, an odometer. There's several things in here that this one has now. And then you got the temperature gauges. Everything is meant to look like original, except for these are backlit like today's cars. Today's new cars, the light comes in from behind the numbers and it lights up the needle. Just like a brand new General Motors pickup truck or Suburban, same thing. I think we've got, and then for these, they've usually got matching clocks to go with them. For instance, on the Dakota, this actually plugs into the computer for the gauges and actually does all the controlling of this clock. And this is backlit as well.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, but James says here, if I go dual, do I go with a booster? The car is all drum front and back, and I don't plan on converting to disc.
You can do either or. We do have a master cylinder in the catalog that can be used, I believe, straight on the firewall with no booster. It's just a manual master cylinder. But we also got the kits where it comes with the booster and the master cylinder together. And we may even have two sizes of boosters available in there. I guess a question for him would be, do you have a V8 or do you have a 6-cylinder in the car?
Okay, so let us know, James, if you have a V8 or a 6-cylinder.
Yes.
All right, and we can answer your question. Okay.
So we've got a 55-56 gauge kit here from Dakota Digital. This is their newest gauge. This is not the one that is supposed to look like a stock one. It's kind of looks more like a modern car gauge. It's as well completely backlit. And in this particular one is a full computer system inside of it. This thing does more than just a tripometer and hours. Actually, there's probably a pretty good sized list of things that this can actually do. And again, matching clocks to go with it and plug into the computer with it. This is pretty impressive. I mean, this could be this particular one could almost be too much for some people. We do have other ones that are much cheaper than this that would just have your basic tripometer. It's got a few of the basics, hours on the engine and stuff, but not as complicated as this can get into. And looks very similar on this. This has a digital readout on the front of face of this gauge that is the computer that you can get into. Whereas the other one, it's not going to have that big screen. It's going to have a small screen with a built-in clock, and the other little screen is going to be your odometer, your tripometer as well.
Okay. All right, so he has a 350 V8.
Okay, so if you got enough vacuum, you want to check your vacuum probably before you purchase the booster. All you have to do is make sure that it's around 17 inches of vacuum or more. They like it to be in that range to make sure that booster is going to work properly for you. If it's just a stock 350, I'm sure it's got plenty of vacuum for a booster. And then if they might offer two different size boosters, it's just up to you. But just remember that a 7-inch booster is not a whole lot better than a manual master cylinder. You probably would want to go with an 8-inch booster to make it actually feel that power in the pedal. But there's nothing wrong with manual. You just got to put your foot into it a little bit like you are now. So it'd be more, not an upgrade in pressure, but an upgrade in safety.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you, Frank.
All right. So anyhow, some of these here, like I said, all of the aftermarket stuff is electronic. It's electrical. There's no more mechanical cables or mechanical sending units. This is all fully electric stuff. So when you are hooking this up, you need to read the instructions. Sometimes these things have to be programmed once you install them. They might want you to program it for your gas tank sending unit. These will work beyond stock sending units, which are 0 to 30 ohms, but that is obviously a selection. You might be using a aftermarket gas tank that might have to use an aftermarket sending unit. So they usually give you the option to do that, so you're not trying to convert things. Oh, and then I forgot, we got a stock 5556 replacement gauge. Now this gauge here has been out for a while. We've had a few phone calls where people are having a little trouble getting the light bulb socket into the back of this. Sometimes there's a rough edge on here. You may have to just file it just a little bit with like a half moon radius file, just to clean the edge up a little bit. It might fight you a little bit trying to put that socket in. Other than that, this thing's great. It's electric. Doesn't make a bunch of racket, bunch of noise like an original one. I know some people might actually like the noise of a tick-tock clock, but this one's has no electric solenoid in it like the original that would fry on you. So I think we had something else here, but yeah, I think we've covered all the stock replacement. Yeah, this one here is this was the clock that goes with the 57 replacement gauges. This is the Dakota Digital stuff. I think we've got this here. You guys can see, if you can see here, there's a little digital display there. That's basically a little computer right there that you're gonna, it's a screen that you can see all your stuff on.
So how do you know which one to use? Is it just preference?
Yeah.
Are some more difficult then to install than others?
Comes down to preference of sometimes the looks. People will pick out a gauge by the looks of it. Some people might want to get into having something fancier to monitor the car more. This will monitor a lot of things on the car. And like I said before, it might monitor more things than you really want or need. So that's what they do. Make other gauges. You know, you got their basic gauges somewhere in the $800 to $900 range, and then their new computer gauges like this, they're going to be more up in the $1,250 range because of the computer that's inside. But like I said before, the other gauges for just around $850 or so, $900, those gauges do have things to keep track of your engine and stuff besides your everyday temperature and oil pressure.
And did they last pretty long once you install them?
Yeah, all the ones that we've sold here, all the years that these have been sold, I've never had anybody complain after 2 years, 4 years. I mean, their first gauges have been out on the market for several years now. And if you did have any little problem with them, they'll fix them for you. There's good warranties on these gauges, but you should never have to worry about them. I mean, I've got Dakota's VHX system going into my own 55. This is not the VHX, this is the fancier one here. But we've got, I think that's about it for the gauges. We do have a bigger selection than this. Of course, Classic Instruments makes 55 and 56 gauges as well. They make 3 selections. They've got one that is their first aftermarket one that's kind of like this 57 with just needles on the face. Then they've got one that they kind of made it look like a nostalgic gauge with a dual face. The light comes up between the front face and the back face. And then we've got, from Classic, they have one set that also looks like original gauges. Kind of gives you that original look still. I've installed those in a guy's 56 and they look really nice. Dakotas, if you want gauges from Dakota that look like original, they do those too. This is the 57 version we were looking at earlier. I don't have the 55, 56 version here, but they do make one that looks almost like original with a full computer and electronics in it.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you. We have a question from George. He says, I have a 57 Bel Air with a 283 Power Glide. My speedometer reads 10 miles per hour too fast. How would you correct this?
And you said it was a Power Glide transmission?
Okay, 283 Power Glide, yes. And it reads 10 miles per hour too fast.
There's a possibility either from changing the tire size or somebody's changed out your gear in the transmission that drives the cable. There's actually two gears. There's a drive gear and a driven gear. And if you switch one of those out with just one tooth, two teeth different, that'll change the speedometer completely. Tire diameter changes a little. If somebody's changed out the rear axle at one time, let's say it used to be 355 gears and they switched it out to 336 gears, that's going to mess up your speedometer. And then you have to recalibrate the gears in the transmission that's driving that cable. You could always try buying a new driven gear from us. We do have stock driven gears based on the transmission or based on the year. And I think between 55, 56 and the 57, there's two sizes for the Power Glide. So that it could have been switched out at one time. That's the easy and cheap way to fix it, unless you can find a speedometer calibration shop in your neighborhood that can check it out for you. And that's the easy fix. Harder fix would have to be changing out the drive gear that's inside the transmission. That's a little bit more complicated. Driven gears can be accessed usually from the outside of the transmission after you take the speedometer cable off.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, guys, we're only going to be here for another 3 minutes, so if you have any questions, please get them on in. And if there's something you would like for us to explain for next week, if there's a particular part that you would like some more information on, just let us know and we'd be happy to do that for you, okay? Maybe you're thinking of buying something but you're not too sure which product to go with. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you.
Yeah, or if you guys have if you have any questions about these gauges, like I said, we have a huge selection of gauges. We've got like 3 different gauges from Classic Instruments to choose from, 3 different types of gauges from Dakota Digital to choose from, and then of course we've got the stock replacement gauges. None of the stock gauges though are electronic, especially the Speedos. They're still mechanical. They still need a cable to drive them. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about this too, you can ask questions about this and we'll try to answer them the best we can. I know sometimes these get a little bit complicated and you got to read the instruction booklet really, really close.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. So 1 more minute, and then we'll be done for today. And let us know for next week, okay? Because we're here to help you out. And I know restoring a Trifive can be difficult. So yeah, lots of questions that come up. So.
Yeah, you got people restoring these cars for the very first time. They've never restored a car before. Could be a father and son project that they're working on, and then you know to the guy that's on his 8th Trifive Chevy. He's already done one of all the different years, and he's experienced in doing this stuff. Most of my experience has been either maintaining my own 55 to drive every day years ago, to restoring it and working on other people's cars. So I'm always putting a gauge cluster in someone's car, or we may be putting disc brake conversions on, power steering conversions. I mean, I've done a little bit of everything on these cars, so it's experience that helps a lot.
Yeah, and we know Frank's got plenty of that. So, all right, guys. Well, it's time now. So we are going to, since I don't see any more questions, we are going to stop for today. And I hope you learned something new today. And thank you, Frank,
All right.
for helping out. And we will see you next week. And thanks for watching.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.